This is the Miller Philosopher. So this was something that crossed my mind when I first heard the news that the Lord of the Rings movies were coming back to the screens in 2026, and with Peter Jackson returning as producer and Andy Serkis, I believe, returning as the director of the movie, and that they want to make more movies as well, or at least the studio does. And that's not really a huge surprise because, money. But something that has also crossed my mind is that this came out right in the gap or window when Amazon's Rings of Power series is still working on their second season, or they're done, but they haven't put out anything for that yet. I've seen no pictures, no teasers, no trailers, no nothing. And yes, I know that if you hate the series, that's a good thing. That's fine, I get it, whatever. But the thought that crossed my mind, though, was how this actually seems, I think, to set up a rivalry or civil war within the Lord of the Rings franchise, because now people who hate the Amazon series but love Peter Jackson's movies have a quote-unquote champion, as it were, returning to the battlefield to combat, the sacrilege that is Rings of Power. I was thinking, why would they set this up right at this time? And it makes me wonder if there is an issue between the studios running the Lord of the Rings franchises, that they would then decide to make such a wonderful yet controversial announcement at this time. It's no secret that Rings of Power, when it came out, has not been popular because of how they've chosen to depict the Second Age and the Númenóreans and certain characters and etc., etc. And I've already done a video on aspects that I felt they had gotten right about it, but other aspects which, that I felt they did not, because I definitely was one of those people who overall did not like how they handled it. But at the same time, I acknowledge that there are bits and pieces here and there that I thought were pretty damn good. But having said that, the announcement of the movies making a return to the screen feels kind of like a kick in the dick, I guess, to Amazon and the makers of that show. And I am wondering how that is going to be perceived by the fan base. If they're going to be, hip hip hooray, or is it going to be, you guys are old, get out of here, kind of a thing. Or hell, if you're one of the people who were fans of the books and didn't like the movies either, it was just, if you're just like, well, fuck both of you, kind of a thing. And it's, again, it's also no secret that there's been struggles within the Rings of Power series, I think, with the writers trying to kind of create their own thing, but also dealing with the massive shadow that is the Lord of the Rings trilogy. And, I had said before in another video that the Lord of the Rings trilogy that Peter Jackson originally did at the beginning of the century casts a long shadow that anyone who does anything Tolkien related is automatically under, whether they like it or not. And yes, I would even include the Tolkien estate and all that stuff in that too, because it is a visual medium and because it just hit the cultural zeitgeist so precisely and so exactly that it revamped and vastly expanded the Lord of the Rings community to what it is now, because it's always been there because of the books, obviously. But one can't deny that after the movies came out, it just fucking exploded. Suddenly, everyone's a Tolkien's fan and is an expert on, Tolkien's writings and stuff like that. And yeah, you can throw me into that too. But all kidding aside, though, it does cast that long shadow. Amazon's Rings of Power has never really been able to get out from under that. Even War of the Rohirrim, which is coming out, which I'm excited for as well, is kind of under that shadow, but because it's being run by people who did the trilogy, as well as bringing back some of the actors from that, I don't think it's under as much pressure as someone else who, Amazon, who's trying to essentially make their own Lord of the Rings, as it were. I don't know. I just kind of feel like this is kind of, if I'm going to use another franchise as an example, it's kind of setting up a War of the Dragons type thing, if you're into Game of Thrones type situation, where there's just going to be a bunch of infighting within the community, over, the goats being back, and, okay, you can get rid of Rings of Power now, or just more of an excuse now for both sides to shit on each other, which is sad. There's room enough in the world, I think, that you can enjoy one and not the other, and that's perfectly fine. Just to watch it. There's also room enough in the world where you can like both, and you can watch both and appreciate both for what they are, if that's your thing. The ultimate goal is just, again, the appreciation of what J.R. Tolkien created in his world, and that the fan base, in one way or the other, regardless of their issues, loves and embraces. And I think it's going to be interesting to see how Amazon acts and the Rings of Power show reacts to this news and to how it's going to play out, because Amazon does seem kind of hell-bent on, now we're going to make our own streaming series for this and yada yada. But now that, the OGs are coming back into the game, that's even more pressure than was already there. But those are just my thoughts. And also, this is a little bit of a rant, so thanks for your patience. This is the Miller Philosopher, and you guys have a good day.